Alright, tonight we're going to be talking about the quadratic formula, but before we do that, let's get some review and express these problems in simplest radical form. So we'll look at problem 1. Try this before I do it, so put me on pause, you know the deal. Alright, so radical 18 can be represented as radical 9 times radical 2, and we can reduce radical 9 into 3, and radical 2 can't be reduced, so we just leave it as radical 2. So if we look at question 2, radical or square root of 180, remember you're trying to find the biggest perfect square that goes into it, so this equals radical 36 times radical 5, and that equals 6 radical 5. Alright, now let's look at this solved by using the quadratic formula. Well, what is the quadratic formula? It's this formula over here. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So what's our first step in using this quadratic formula? Well, first we have to put the quadratic in standard form. What is standard form? That's ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. So that's standard form. So number 2, our next step is to find a, b, and c. 3, we plug it into the formula. Into formula. Now the only thing I ask is pay attention to the b value, because right here we have negative b, so if the b value is negative 2, you have to remember to negate negative 2, which this would become a positive 2. Just always be careful of the b value. That's where a lot of kids mess up. Fourth step is to simplify. And we'll move this down. And the last step is to reduce. Alright, let's put this baby in action. Alright, so looking at example 1, x squared minus 4x equals 2. We look at our first step, and it says put the quadratic in standard form. And we remember that standard form is ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. So we're going to subtract this 2 over, and we're going to end up with x squared minus 4x minus 2 equals 0. So now our second one says to find our a, b, and c values. So we can see a equals 1 because it's only x squared, there's nothing in front of the x squared. B equals negative 4, and c equals negative 2. Okay, so now that we found those, now we plug it into our formula. So remember we have x equals negative b, so negative 4, plus or minus the square root of b squared, so negative 4 squared minus 4 times AC, so 1 times negative 2. It's all under the radical, all over 2 times a, which is 2 times 1. Alright, so we have negative 4, negative 4, which becomes just regular positive 4, plus or minus. Now, when you go to solve what's under the radical, don't put the radical first. Get the number inside first. So in your calculator, put negative 4 squared minus 4 times 1 times negative 2 and get a number. Because if it's a weird looking number, we have to know before we put it under the square root. So after you do that, you get, it becomes radical 24 all over 2. And we can reduce radical 24 because that's radical 4 times radical 6. And then we get, this equals 4 plus or minus 2 radical 6 over 2. But we're not done yet. So what you can do is, if all three of these numbers right here, so if you make a little heart, I guess, if all three of these numbers can be reduced, we can reduce them. So you can reduce 4. 4 divided by 2 is 2, plus or minus 2 divided by 2 is 1, so we don't need the 1 anymore. And radical 6 you leave alone because you cannot divide a radical by a regular number. So we're left with 2 plus or minus radical 6. Alright, let's look at number 2. Hopefully you did a better job of keeping your space than I did. But let's get this in standard form so we know we add the 1 over to make that 0. So we have 2x squared plus 3x plus 1 equals 0. We have our a value, a, b, and c value. A, b, c. A equals 2, b equals 3, c equals 1. Write a, b, c. We're ready to plug it into our formula. X equals, so we have negative b, which is just negative 3, plus or minus the square root of 3 squared minus 4 AC, so 4 times 2 times 1, all over 2a, which a is 2 in this case. Alright, so when you plug what's underneath the radical into your calculator, we should get negative 3 plus or minus the square root of 1 over 4, because 2 times 2 is 4. Alright, now we get to simplify, so we get negative 3 plus or minus the square root of 1 is just 1 over 4. Sometimes you can get lucky where the radical will reduce to a regular number, and that's when this problem gets really easy. So now we have to set up two problems. We have to set up x equals negative 3 plus 1 over 4 and x equals negative 3 minus 1 over 4, because there's plus or minus here, so we need to solve for both. So x equals negative 3 plus 1 makes it negative 2 over 4, which is just negative 1/2. And this one, x equals negative 3 minus 1 over 4, so that's negative 4 over 4, which just equals negative 1. Alright, that's the quadratic formula. Enjoy your night. See you tomorrow.